episode 272 of the Various Sundry Podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio, the beautiful campus of Grace College and Grace Theological Seminary, by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is ready to go to a leadership event later today, John Scott Sloat.
Actually, I have two leadership events this week.
Wow.
One today here in Winona Lake, and one Thursday. I think I'll be in Kendallville.
Okay.
Home of NBA superstar Brad Miller.
Superstar?
That's the sign.
It literally says superstar.
It used to be. I don't know if it's still there, but it used to be on the Kendallville sign, home of NBA superstar Brad Miller.
Seems generous to call him superstar.
It's generous to even put a sign up in his honor.
I mean, you get a local kid that makes the NBA and has a solid career, I suppose.
How many year career do you think he had in the NBA?
I don't know. You want to look it up while we're...
I can.
I don't know. I mean, look, I'm sympathetic to the small towns that want to, give a shout out to, their prize athlete who makes it to the league, and so I don't have an issue other than calling him a superstar.
You don't want to call him a superstar?
No. No.
There was a time where that was on the Kendallville sign. I don't know if it's still there, but it was there.
I mean, we might have listeners in that area, so maybe they could.
That's probably true.
Maybe they could reach out. Have you figured out how long his career was?
I'm looking for
Is there no Wikipedia?
Oh, here we go. He started he started the NBA career in '99. Okay. And he retired in 2012.
That's a 13-year career, man.
Yeah. That's a decent career.
I feel like he was a bit of a journeyman, though, right?
1, 2, 3. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different stints. Now there's some overlap in there. He's with the Bulls twice.
Yeah.
I think that might be the only overlap. He also played what I am assuming is a Italian team. It's got 3 words, and 2 of them end in I and 1 of them end in O. So I got to make an assumption that's Italian.
Okay. Gotcha.
Career statistics. He averaged 11.2 points per game.
That's not bad.
Rebounds, 7.1.
That's pretty good.
And 2.8 assists per game.
Yeah. Brad, if you're listening, we are impressed with your career. We're just rejecting the title superstar, and which I'm confident actually you yourself probably would not claim for yourself. But in any case, Brad, if you're listening, if you'd like to contact the show, or if Brad's family is listening, or Brad's third cousin from Kendallville
or really just anybody in Kendallville
is listening, you can contact the show on X at V&S-Pod. You can email the show, varioussunderpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube. And we would love for you to leave a 5-star rating. And again, if you're Brad Miller, you could just say hello in your review.
Yeah. I'd bring Brad Miller on the show even. Would you do an abbreviated interview with Brad Miller?
We'd consider it.
Yeah.
We'd consider it.
Absolutely.
All right, John, it's that time of year. Let's talk a little sports. The madness has arrived.
Yeah, games start Thursday?
Well, again, depending on how you parse out these
first 4 or whatever.
First 4 games. So this episode drops on a Tuesday. So on the day of the first 4 begins. So there's games two games Tuesday, 2 games Wednesday, and then the tournament starts in earnest on Thursday.
And I got our bracket up and running.
Yes.
I'll throw the link in the show notes. I believe we have 10 participants right now. I'll get another email out today.
I thought it was 11.
Oh, was it up to 11? I checked
yesterday. If you check, I bet it's more now because I had some requests from family to get that, and they did not get the email. That was sent. So let me see. We now are up to 15 folks.
15?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how much we had last year.
We had like pushing upper 30s, I felt like, last year.
That's right.
So, again, the winner of the bracket competition gets a signed copy of one of my books. So you get to pick which one you want, and we will find a way to get that to you signed, autographed, and that'll
always
be
some trolls in these bracket names. The one guy says Juan Soto isn't worth much. That feels aggressive.
It sounds like you're taking that personally.
I just don't know if this is the time or the place.
Okay. Wow. Yes, I have not filled out my bracket yet. I really haven't honestly looked at the bracket. I just know who the 1 seeds are. And I know there's a lot of controversy about
North Carolina
getting in over West Virginia and also over Indiana. There's one more team maybe. Anyway.
It's a ratings play, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's hard. Look, I don't want to be that guy, but the committee likes to talk about quad one wins. They were 1-12.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you've got West Virginia who's got more quad one wins than
Can you define quad one?
Well, I think it's just they break up the number of teams in the NCAA Division I in terms of like net rankings, and then they break it into 4 quadrants basically, and so that'd be what, like a top 75-ish, 75, 80-ish win, and so it's I think it's ridiculous. Like the SEC gets 13 teams in. I'm sorry. Do we really need Oklahoma in the field? They're 4-12 in their conference. Like, come on. I'd rather see a second bid go to some of these mid-major conferences than the 13th team in the SEC get a bid.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think Indiana got worked over a little bit in terms of they should have been ahead of North Carolina. I think West Virginia should have been ahead of them, but I'm not going to cry over that'd be what, the 10th Big Ten team not getting in?
Yeah.
Spare me. Like, I just don't have a lot of sympathy for that. And so I also, the athletic director for North Carolina was the head of the selection committee.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
And, I mean, now, of course,
Wowzer.
they stressed, well, he has to step out of the room when his team is discussed. Okay, sure. But, I mean, it's just hard for that not to feel a little bit like the old boys network in there, like, let's do a solid for whatever his name is. And
yeah.
And you're right. I think, North Carolina is going to draw some eyeballs in terms of viewers.
My I don't know what he is to me, but my sister-in-law, so my wife's sister's husband,
Okay.
is a North Carolina grad.
All right.
And so how much garbage do I give him about this? What's appropriate?
Well,
and is it fair when I just college basketball is something I'm interested in, but do not have a particular team I root for?
Yeah. See, I don't tend to be that guy who gives other people garbage about their team. So I'm not the best person to ask about that. I'm not your guy for counsel on that. So, okay, number 1 seeds. We have Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston.
Any qualms there?
No.
Okay.
No, I think all those make sense. There's been a little bit of, questions about Auburn since they come into, I guess they've lost 3 of their last 4 coming into the tournament. But their resume speaks for itself. I think they've clearly established themselves as one of the deserving teams. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't done the dive yet in terms of which of the 5-12 matchups are you going to pick for your upset and that kind of thing. So
How many brackets do you usually fill out?
I just do one.
Just one?
Yeah.
That's what I do too.
I don't have an issue. Here's my general principle on the bracket. The moment you fill out more than one bracket, you lose the right to brag. Because you're hedging your bets. Like I have no like it annoys me when you get somebody who's bragging about I'm winning. I won this. Like, well, how many brackets? Well, that was like one of my 10 brackets. Well, good for you, buddy. Like,
so I saw one guy on Twitter who said you should fill out 3. One in like a minute and a half. Just go through gut reaction.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? The second bracket you fill out is with your head. Mm-hmm. You look at the matchups. You spend a lot of time. And the third bracket you fill out is with your heart.
I have no issue with that whatsoever. You just can't brag. Like, you can be excited that you're winning, but you can't brag and act like you know something about the game.
Yeah.
Once you go more than one bracket, then you've lost the right to brag about your basketball knowledge. Mm-hmm. So that's my only qualm. Go ahead, fill out 12, fill out 15. Fine by me.
Yeah.
So as long as one of them is in our Various and Sundry podcast bracket.
Amen.
Challenge. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. Did you watch any of the basketball over the weekend? Some of the conference championship games, kind of thing?
No, just our Grace Lancers.
Yes.
That's the only basketball I watched over the weekend.
Well, let's talk about our Grace Lancers. For the 4th consecutive year, they advanced to the Sweet 16. They won the Winona Lake Pod.
Yeah, it's a good pod.
Yeah, they in the opening round beat Carolina University.
What Carolina was that from, by the way?
They are from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay, good to know.
And I think
and my understanding is that they were like 1-12 to start the season.
I believe it was 1-9.
1-9.
And then they added some players at the semester break, and that completely turned their season around.
And then they won their conference tournament, right?
They did win their conference tournament to get in. They still had a less than 500 record.
What did you think of their play?
Well, their best player, Polk was his last name. I think it was Andre.
And you called this game, so this is all.
Yes. We had a stat. So this is a little bit advanced analytics kind of stuff, but he is the player who has taken the most shot attempts in all of college basketball playing in isolation, meaning that basically what they do is they put him on an island, so to speak. They isolate him and say, "Go get a basket for us." He is the highest percentage isolation player in all of college basketball at all levels. And so they were in essence, in large part, a one-man show. And they just didn't have the firepower to stay with the Lancers. And
so that game was won by,
oh gosh, what was it? It's like 121-69 or something like that.
Right.
It was a
50-point victory.
50-point win. Yeah. And then the second game that the Lancers won, a little bit more competitive. They played the University of Pikeville out of Kentucky. Yes. So, incredibly physical first half of basketball. One of the most physical I've seen all season. And the officials had just decided, we'll let them play. And so, if you were watching the game and you even took a little bit of time to watch some of the off the ball action, like the screening and all that kind of the post play, it was like hand to hand combat.
It was chippy.
It was getting very. Now in the second half, the officials tightened the whistle a little bit, started calling more, which was good. But Lancers turned a 1-point halftime lead. Eventually. Extended, got up to around 12 or 14 in the second half, and I think they ended up winning by 8 was the final number.
I met Pikeville's president.
You did?
Yep. So I was working the alumni suite with various groups. I actually went down on the court at halftime of the first game, the Carolina game.
Okay.
And got my photo taken at half court. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't. Okay. No, I was rushing to the alumni suite
to get some food.
To get some food.
I saw you in there between games
as a media member. Yes, one of the perks.
Press. But But yeah, he was a real seemingly nice guy, and I had a partisan moment in the alumni suite with him, where I asked him, "Is this your first time in Winona Lake?" Thinking he's at University of Pikeville. He's never been here before. He goes,
Yeah.
No. Years ago, I worked at Indiana Wesleyan.
Oh.
And right out of my mouth, without missing a beat, I go, "I'm sorry about that."
How do you respond to that?
He laughed.
Okay.
He laughed.
Okay.
He was a good-natured guy.
Okay. I will say one thing that surprised me. Pikeville got down – they were down 11 with 51 seconds to go. And they subbed out their starters. That felt too early.
Yeah.
Especially so they put in their next five, basically. They come down and hit a three. And all of a sudden there's 40 seconds left. They're down 8. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not impossible. A lot of things have to go your way, but not impossible.
Yeah.
So it just felt like a little early to wave the flag. But in any case, the Lancers will advance. They play on Thursday. We think it's 3 p.m. Central.
Yes.
4 p.m.
Against
Eastern.
St. Mary's?
St. Mary's of the Woods.
Indiana.
Are they in Indiana school?
I believe so.
Okay, they're an 11 seed. So they pulled off a couple of upsets to advance.
Yeah.
So everything looks set for the Lancers to advance to at least to the Elite Eight, where they would likely play Arizona Christian, the 1 seed in their bracket. So it would be a weird thing for the Lancers to win the national title this season after last year's historically great team didn't win it.
Yeah.
So
it'd be like the Tennessee Volunteers winning the national title
the year after
Peyton Manning leaves.
Exactly.
With I'm trying to remember the quarterback there.
Was that T. Martin?
It was T. Martin. Yes.
Okay. One other sports thing we have to talk about. This broke literally 15 minutes after we hit stop on the app last week. Your New York Football Jets have a new quarterback, John.
Yep.
Who is it?
It is one Justin Fields.
Yeah, Justin Fields, Ohio State great.
Now,
Justin Fields.
You're on record of not liking Ohio State players signing with the Jets.
I am.
How you doing with this?
I mean, look, I will root for Justin to do well. So now you've managed to
I might get you a Jets jersey, a Fields Jets jersey.
Find me a way to get me to actually root for the Jets, or at least to be hoping that they do well. Not that I hope they don't do well. I'm indifferent to them because they're not my team. But John, let's be honest. There's just been this track record of Ohio State guys going to the Jets and not performing well.
Mm-hmm. Nick Mangold did quite well.
He did. I'd say Garrett Wilson's been good.
Garrett Wilson's been very good. Yeah.
And they have Jeremy Ruckert, tight end. I think he could be. He has not played, not been as significant a factor as I might have thought. So we'll see. But remind me, did the Jets even have a coach yet?
Yes, Aaron Glenn.
He
played cornerback for the Jets in the Parcells era.
And what about an offensive coordinator?
They have that as well. He was the passing game coordinator for, I want to say the Rams. No, that's wrong. For a team out there, very well thought of guy in the NFL community, from what I hear. And Aaron Glenn was the defensive coordinator for the Lions the last 3 years.
Okay,
so he's good.
You would think. I mean, late in the season last year, the Lions' defense wasn't good, but they had a lot of
injuries. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's not quite fair to judge him based on that. So, yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. When it comes to quarterbacks in particular, I think where you get drafted and how you get developed makes a much bigger difference than most people give credit for. I mean, you're going to have some of these elite guys who are just, no matter where they go, are going to be, probably going to be very good.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think there's another tier of guys that are like, they could be a really, really good NFL quarterback if the team doesn't mess them up.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Bears totally messed up Justin Fields. Didn't develop him and actually did some things that made him a worse quarterback in some ways. So I don't know how much of his time at the Steelers was helpful. He started the first, 6 games or something.
4-2, 4-1,
something like that. So solid record.
I don't think he wowed anybody there.
Correct. Yeah. Which is why they were content to let Justin Fields go. The Steelers.
And Russell Wilson. He's no longer there, right?
I believe that's correct. And, I mean, there's talk that
they're signing Aaron Rodgers.
Are they going to sign him? There's talk.
I've heard talk.
Yeah.
But there's also talk he could go to the Minnesota Vikings, which, was Brett Favre's trajectory.
Yeah.
Green Bay, the Jets,
Yeah.
the Vikings.
I would love that.
There's part of me that would love it too. Yeah.
I would love that. All right. We should move on to our main topic for the day. And it's a tweet.
Yeah.
This is an episode about a tweet.
A whole tweet. No, really 2 tweets.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're talking about today is, in one sense, the combination of and relationship between religion, education, and gender. Now, that's kind of the very, very big picture. We're going to look at something a little bit more specific, I think. So John, why don't you walk us through what this tweet was? Actually, why don't you start with this? This is from Ryan Burge.
Right.
Tell us who Ryan Burge is. We've talked a little bit about him, but
yeah, he does data about political science and religion. He teaches at a university. I'm not sure which one.
It's somewhere in Illinois, I think.
But he was also a mainline Protestant pastor until his church closed probably 6-8 months ago. They made the difficult decision to close the door. So he was, I believe, American Baptist was his denomination.
That sounds correct, yes.
But what he's really known for is he has tweet threads and also has a newsletter that he puts out that is just data surrounding religion.
Yes, he is at Southern Illinois University.
Nice. Somewhere in Southern Illinois, I'm sure.
The Salukis, I believe.
Oh, really?
The nickname there, yeah.
So he does this data about religion, and in this particular piece, or this particular tweet, it's really 2 tweets, he's asking participants the question, he's asked, how often do you attend religion? Then he breaks it out to those who attend weekly, and then breaks that down according to gender and how educated they are. And so in the initial tweet, you see in 2008, probably the narrative and cultural script we would expect, regardless of education level. As education rises, so does religiosity.
Which I think
which goes against, I think, the narrative a little bit.
Counter to what I think most people, if you did the sort of random man on the street interview, would go the other way. The more educated you get, the less religious you become.
Right.
And that's not true.
Right.
Statistically speaking, it is the opposite.
And truthfully, that trend remains steady, that the more educated you are, the more religious you are in every year. Pretty much. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm comfortable saying that. And however, the switch we see is in 2008, and where I think the narrative, where the typical understanding would be, is that women are always slightly more religious than men.
Yes.
Regardless of education. However, as he points out here, that begins to change, and by 2016, men with a 4-year college degree are more religious than women.
Yes.
And that trend continues and widens.
Yeah, that's the big.
By 2023.
Yeah.
To the point where, and even goes down to some college as well. Men are just slightly, probably within the margin of error there. But yes, so the baseline, or the big punchline is, men who are more educated are more like men who hold 4-year college degrees
or higher.
Yeah, it's even greater for postgrad.
That's
He has
right.
in another tweet. Are more likely to be religious
And
than women.
In this context, religious is being defined as attending religious services at least once a week. So this is not just some general like I'm positively inclined towards religion. This is I mean when you look at these sort of statistical analyses, this is basically kind of the gold standard of how do we gauge someone's religiosity, religious engagement, and this is it in terms of like if you are if you attend a religious service at least once a week, that's sort of like the highest level of engagement they measure, right?
Yeah.
And so this is not some generic like, oh, I'm positively inclined towards it or identify as a Christian or as whatever.
Or quite frankly, in the State of the Bible surveys we go through, we'll probably go through again this year.
Yeah.
There were parts where I was like, really? Highly engaged with the Bible is classified as engaging with your Bible more than once a month, right? That's highly engaged, and that's not what we're talking about here. This isn't attends a service once a month or attends a service once a quarter, or occasionally you attend weekly. It is at least once a week. So they are committed individuals to their different religious areas.
Yeah. So let's. I want to come at this from at least a couple of angles. The first is, before we get to the education piece, let's talk about the gender piece, the shift from women being more engaged in terms of the once-a-week participation at a higher level, switching over the past now, 15-ish years to it being men who are more consistently engaged. What do you make of that trend?
I don't think I have a good answer. I have some.
Well, give a bad answer.
I have some theories as to why that is, but
well, give us one theory.
So, I do think secular women that are more likely to choose education than religious women.
Okay, that could be part of it. I can see that.
I think that's some of it. I think there's a selection bias involved where women are more likely to choose college or even postgraduate work who are not religious.
Okay.
Then I think men who are.
But has there? I don't know. I think there could be something there. My question is, so what's provoked the change? Because I think you could say, wasn't that true 30 years ago? That secular women
chose education
more than religious women.
100%. 100%.
So then my question is, what accounts for the shift from there was still a higher 30 years ago there was still a higher percentage of women.
2008.
Yeah. So even 15 years, 17 years ago now. I'm not trying to say there's nothing to that theory. I'm just trying to figure out why the shift then, because I think that was true, in 2008.
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know. I think there could be something around some of the critical nature of men from some of these higher education institutions where. And so they're looking for meaning and purpose elsewhere and finding it in religion. And that's just a stab in the dark. I have nothing to back that up.
Well, I do think there are other statistical indicators that on the whole men are becoming and if you think of like let's say under 40, men are becoming, generally speaking, culturally speaking, more conservative or trending more conservative, and women are trending more liberal in terms of at least their political and social views. So I think that is I think that's connected to this in some way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one piece of it.
So maybe you don't want to bring in the but why specifically four-year college and postgrads do they outperform women? When I think that's true, but I think that's maybe even more true for high school, some college, that their views are becoming far more conservative.
Right. You just don't see the gap, right? So if you look at these numbers, and we'll make sure we throw a link in the notes to the tweets that have the graphs in here. Even just going back to 2020, women were still outpacing men in terms of attending religious services at least once a week
By a percentage point or two.
Like basically slightly ahead, a couple points ahead. But then you get to the college educated and above, and it's a reversal, 3-point edge for men in 2020, same percentage, but then 2023 it jumps up to 5%. So there's a movement even further. So there is something about the education piece.
The gap is closing.
Which gap?
Oh, the gap under men are becoming more religious and women are becoming less religious, even at the high school level.
Correct. But the gap is increasing between men and women on the college educated and above.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's gone from 3 to 5. I mean, it was trending pretty so once men sort of surpassed them, so in 2016 it looks like, there was a 2-point edge, and then it became a 3-point edge in 2022 and 2022, and then 2023 it's now up to a 5-point edge. So, I think that, and then I think it's even more notable when you start to factor in under some college, right? Up until 2022, those with some college, women still had a slight advantage, or it was even, and now it's, again, we're talking about 1 or 2 point percentages here, so be careful about making conclusions. But it looks like men have now surpassed women in that category. So all that to say, there seems to be a trend here. This is a discernible trend. This is not a statistical anomaly.
Yeah.
So I do think there's some cultural factors that play into this reality. But in terms of the gender piece, I don't know. I don't know how much of this is just rooted in those larger cultural trends, where women are tending to become more progressive / liberal, and men are becoming more conservative. Yeah.
And it's becoming kind of like people are driving Teslas as sort of a badge of I'm a conservative. Church has become that, as well as education can be a badge for progressivism.
Sure. I also think, and we can speak to this on the education end of things, another factor in this is the fact that within higher education itself, fewer and fewer men are pursuing college compared to women. And so most college campuses, I mean, what are we at here at Grace? Are we 60-40 women to men?
I'm not sure. That sounds about right.
I think that's about where we are.
We're definitely more women than men.
Yes. And that's common. You are unlike – it's harder to find colleges and universities that have more male students than female students. That's rare.
Except at an all-male college.
Yes, that would make sense. Yes, thank you. So I think there's a general trend because there's been a revival of the trades and things like that, and people, looking at the cost of college education and making a decision of, I don't want to go into significant debt to do that, and so I do think there's some of that going on. But then, why is it that the men who are going on to college emerging more religious?
This is where I go like, It's interesting. I don't have a good answer as to why.
Yeah. Now, before we wrap up on this, I want to make a pivot to is there anything that the church should be doing, or how should, you've got your ordinary pastor sitting there listening to this, and is there anything that you think beyond just the sort of, should be aware of this? Okay, I'm aware of it. Is there anything that you would encourage that pastor to think about, to consider adjusting or adapting or anything?
I mean, I would be careful about discouraging college attendance from your people. If the trend in the data is that the more education there is, the more religious, and that's not ironclad.
Sure.
That's not. But if you're going to hedge a little bit, I would say education, more education over less education.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would not have an ironclad anything, right? That everybody in every 17-year-old in your church needs to be going to college, but
unless they're coming to grace, of course.
That's right. But it needs to be a strong consideration.
Yeah.
For the Christian parents, and I think pastors should be. I think there's been some pushback on the college experience, and I think the College for All movement was not great.
I think it was well-intentioned and misguided.
Yes. And all the data shows we need about 2/3 of our young people going to college, and that will get us where we need to go. Indiana's like a little low. We're at just over 50% of our students that go to college in Indiana.
Yeah.
We could use a bit more. Would there be anything you would tell Joe Schmo, pastor?
Well, this is something that I would say it's tangentially related. I would say this. I think some pastors are nervous about going deeper in their preaching in terms of depth and complexity, out of this misguided sense of, well, I have to preach in such a way that basically the target audience is like the 8th or 9th grader, and that I can't afford to ever go into a little bit more depth from the pulpit than this, because I just think if you have a more and more educated crowd, I think part of what the preacher needs to be doing, I mean, at one level, the preacher needs to try to put, this is an overused metaphor, but put cookies on all the shelves. And so, you need to make sure you're speaking in a way that the late elementary and early junior high kid can understand. But there's also a place to go after the more educated people in your congregation, and even in a sermon. But the sermon's not the only place to do that. I might say that if this is the case, then maybe there's more of an appetite for some of these adult education or Sunday school kind of opportunities for people who are already educated and have shown a bent towards education to say, you know what, I want to go deeper in my faith. I want to know more about the Bible. I want to know more about theology. I want to understand more about the historic roots of my faith. And so I think there could be an opportunity for that, if it's done well, to maybe scratch that itch, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think it's not just for those. I think this is another side note, but I think we do our high school and junior high students a disservice when all we feed them is very dumbed down Bible lessons at best.
Yeah.
They need to go deeper and be ready as they go off to college and have a good grounded faith, one that's beyond just, sort of moralistic stories from the Bible of, hey, don't engage in these sinful things and, be nice to one another kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll put a link to that tweet in the show notes. We will also put a link to the tournament bracket challenge.
Absolutely.
But Now it is time for Today in Sports History.
All right, today in sports history, March 18th, 2025.
Wild.
1964, Green Bay Packers halfback Paul Hornung.
Horning. I know it doesn't look like that, but it's pronounced Horning.
Huh. And Detroit Lions defensive tackle Alex Karras. Did I get that one right?
Karras.
Oh, well, that's Greek. Are reinstated in the NFL after a 1-year suspension for betting on football.
It goes back that far. To 64. It's only a matter of time, right? Before. I mean, we've had some like 6-game suspensions already from
We had
people.
a 1 season, I believe.
Did we?
Wasn't the wide receiver Calvin Ridley banned?
Was he for a year?
I thought it was a year, but maybe I'm wrong.
I'm telling you, it's only a matter of time before you're going to have
Somebody throws a game.
Somebody's throwing games.
Yeah, we're going to have point shavings. Yeah.
I mean, realistically, though, you kind of got to get to the quarterback or an official. You got to get to an official or a quarterback or a coach.
Well, in football, in basketball,
in basketball, you have a lot more options.
Yeah. 1985, 2-time Cy Young Award winner Denny McClain is convicted of embezzlement and drug trafficking, sentenced to 25 years, but conviction later reversed.
Yep.
Why was that conviction reversed?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, boy. I just read the next one. 1994, American figure skater Tonya Harding pleads guilty to felony attack on former Olympic teammate Nancy Kerrigan.
You were too young to know to kind of be following that as it was happening.
So I brushed up on it when the movie came out.
Yes,
because they did a movie, I think, trying to revamp her image, but which is difficult.
A little bit, yeah.
And I don't listen to the show as much as I used to, but Dan Patrick is a pretty good sports interviewer.
Yeah.
And does an interview with Tonya Harding. It's got to be 10, 12 years ago now when this movie came out. And he said after the fact, he goes, I talked to the publicist. I said, is there anything I need to avoid in the interview? She said, no, go ahead. And so he asked her about getting well, we should probably tell it. She basically got a hit to take out Nancy Kerrigan's knees.
It was wasn't it like a boyfriend or something?
Yeah.
Who like attacked her and like hit her with like a crowbar or something in the knees.
Yes.
So not to kill her, obviously, but to injure her so she would so she would have a better chance of winning an Olympic medal.
Yes. And Dan asked her about this just in the first 3 minutes of the interview. And she goes, you serious right now? And he goes, well, yeah, they told me I could ask anything. This is what I want to talk about.
Yeah. And
she goes, I'm done, and hangs up on him. and is just like leaves the interview.
I mean, that's the most obvious question of all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, it's the publicist's fault for,
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, 1973, New Jersey Devil, Dave, oh, goodness, Andreychuk?
I think it's Andreychuk.
I was very close.
You're close. We'll give you credit.
Is maybe partial credit. Is the 26th NHL player to score 500 goals.
Okay.
Never heard of the guy. 2013, Kim Yu-na, I don't know if I got that right.
I think that's right.
Of South Korea wins the women's 2013 World Figure Skating Championships.
Okay. So who do you like out of that?
Probably Tonya Harding.
Okay.
Who do you like? Is that who you were thinking?
Sure, we can go with Tonya Harding. It seems wrong to reward her for her.
We go with Nancy Kerrigan if you'd like. I mean,
probably should. I don't know. We'll see what I decide to put in the
boyfriend.
The boyfriend,
the mobster boyfriend.
Yeah. All right. One thing you liked.
All right, I'm very excited about this. I haven't shared it with you yet. Have you ever heard of the movie September 5th?
I don't think so.
It came out last year. I had never heard of it. We watched it this weekend. September 5th is the day at the 1972 Munich Olympics.
Oh, where the Israeli athletes were held hostage and then killed.
That's correct. And the whole movie is filmed from the ABC, from the perspective of the ABC sports desk in Munich covering the Olympics. And so you have and something like, I was reading up, something like 90% of this is true.
Yeah.
95% of it is true. And the movie stitches together real video from 1972. And it's gripping, incredible. Media ethics come out in the midst of it. And they show this in the trailer, so I don't feel bad. But ABC was able to weasel a camera into the Olympic Village past the security by dressing up one of their members as an athlete and giving him a fake ID. And he ran through with a camera where Peter Jennings was 200 yards away watching this all unfold.
Wow.
And so they are putting video on attempted German rescue missions.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the terrorists are inside the apartment watching the ABC feed. And so they absolutely – but it's an incredibly gripping movie, really well done, really fascinating. It would totally be worth your time.
I would be interested in that. I've seen some documentary stuff on that set of events. Crazy.
But I mean, just that this happened while members of the Nazi Party are still alive. And like they're even – Peter Jennings is even though he's passed away, his voice is in it because he was inside the Olympic Village. He goes, I think it's worth questioning whether they had Nazi help to get in there. And it's incredibly tense. It's dramatic. It was, stuff like the news. They're in this newsroom and there's one guy making all the calls, do X, Y, Z, and it's just filled with smoke. It's clearly 1972. It was fascinating.
Gotcha. Okay, September 5th.
September 5th.
What platform is that on?
I think it's on Paramount.
Okay. Don't have that.
But if you could rent it, if you could do any,
that's true.
It'd be worth your time.
Okay. I'm also going to go with a television show that yours wasn't a television show. Yours was a movie. I'm going to go with a TV show that my wife and I started watching recently. It is a TV show called Chuck.
I've seen it.
Have you? You've seen?
Very, very good. The whole thing.
Yeah, it's really entertaining.
The last couple seasons lose the plot a little bit.
Of course.
But
we're early in season 2.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean.
Not believable, but enjoyable.
Oh, completely unbelievable. Completely unbelievable.
But it's definitely a comedy.
It is. And so we've been enjoying that. And it kind of hits that sweet spot of it's entertaining. It's not demanding of me intellectually at all.
Sure.
The characters are interesting to me, not in some sort of like deep, textured, layered sense, but just in terms of these are funny individuals. So
absolutely,
very much have been enjoying that. So that is my one thing I liked. All right, John, we have talked about March Madness being here. Make sure you check out the link in the show notes for joining the tournament challenge that we are doing as part of the podcast. Winner gets a signed copy of one of my books. We have talked about the intersection of religion, education, and gender, and why it is, maybe, that men with college degrees and above are most likely to be engaged in religious services on a weekly basis. We have talked about Tonya Harding getting her boyfriend to kneecap Nancy Kerrigan.
Yeah.
We have talked about September 5th, the movie. We've talked about Chuck. And so I think, by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.